Oh, the world has endured its warmest three-month period ever, according to the European Union's climate monitor. And the agency is warning that this year is likely to be the hottest in human history. The EU's Copernicus climate change service says global temperatures between June and August had averaged at about 16.77 degrees Celsius, while smashing the previous record set back in 2019. August was the warmest such month on record and warmer than every other month this year, except for July. The global average temperature for July was 16.82 degrees Celsius. The figure dwarfs the previous record set in 2016. In response to the Copernicus data, UN Chief Antonio Guterres said the dog days of summer are not just barking, they are biting, adding that the climate breakdown has begun. But it's not just heat that is in focus today. The World Meteorological Organization has released a report showing that climate change also has a clear impact on air quality. The organization has pointed out that heat-triggered events such as wildfires or dust storms can lead to dangerous air quality with knock-on effects on human health. And for more, Trent Murray joins us live from Berlin. Trent, as you see that the release of figures that are essentially complementary in what they suggest, the EU Climate Monitor's latest data set a grim warning about a possible future that we could face. Tell us more about these findings.
Yeah, that's right. It's certainly eye-popping data which has been released by the EU today. This coming from Copernicus, which, as you mentioned, has gathered the data using the EU's fleet of satellites that orbit the planet, but also radar stations on the ground measuring everything from temperature to weather systems more broadly. And what it says effectively is pretty much what matches up, I think, what many here would say anecdotally, which it just is growingly warmer. It's been an incredibly warm 3 months here in Europe. And the data now suggests it is the warmest 3 months the continent and the world has faced in 120,000 years. So effectively human history. Now, a lot of the problem here, it would seem, is that the world's oceans absorb around 90% of heat. And what we are seeing is that as climate change increases, greenhouse emissions grow, that those oceans are now warming at a very, very high rate. In fact, if you exclude the polar regions, according to this report, global average sea temperatures have exceeded that 2016 record every single day this summer from July through August. So it is clear that the data is now matching up what I think a lot of people are seeing on the ground here, which is that temperatures are much warmer than normal. Interestingly as well, what the EU is saying today is that even if the Northern Hemisphere experiences a quote-unquote normal winter later this year, that the probability that 2023 will end up the warmest year that humanity has experienced is very, very high.
Of course, data out from the World Meteorological Organization warning that heat in itself, now that's a problem, but heat can also have indirect impacts. It says climate change is generating what it calls a witch's brew of pollutants that could threaten human health. How are experts suggesting that we tackle both these problems together?
Yeah, and look, again, this is probably news that won't surprise people that are watching in some of those big cities around the world like Beijing or New Delhi that do experience major air pollution problems, particularly when the weather is very, very hot. What this report is saying is that these rising temperatures do have a very direct impact on air quality. They point to issues like out-of-control wildfires, which we saw in Canada and the north of the US earlier this summer. That, of course, contributes to smoke and irritants in the air from that. We also, of course, see dust storms being very, very common when it's hot. And, of course, also the increase of use of fossil fuels when it's hot. If people are using their air conditioning more and more energy, if they're not powering that from green sources, then there is an indirect impact from the increased use of, say, coal and other fossil fuels. So what this report today is saying is that, of course, it's not just heat that we need to be mindful of, but also the associated impacts of heat, like air pollution. They did point to one area, though, where there can be improvements done for people that are living in cities and towns, and that is the use of parks and forested areas. They point to some cities in Brazil that have increased parks, and they say that covering areas with trees can really help improve air quality by absorbing carbon dioxide and lowering temperature for people that live in those regions.
Oh, thanks for that, Trent. Trent Murray live for us there from Berlin.